Welcome everyone to the Fourth Taviran podcast. We are a Wheel of Time podcast that talks about the books from Robert Jordan, books 1 through 15, and also a little bit about the TV show here and there, but mostly we'll be focusing on the books as we have read them several times, and that is our main focus on this podcast is the books and how we like them and just the different aspects, characters, situations, organizations, all that stuff. So we will be talking in this episode, we will be starting our first review episode of The Great Hunt, Book 2 of The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. And we just finished up the first book, and so you can go back and listen to those review episodes. The first few are audio only, so you can find them on our audio podcast feed. And there are some on YouTube, some video podcasts of those, but there's just kind of a picture with us talking. It's mainly the audio podcast. And then the last two are actually video podcasts in this format. And we will be using this format from now on, and there will be still audio podcasts on your podcast app if you want to listen to just audio. Book 2, The Great Hunt, The Wheel of Time. We finally made it. So we got here. We will be doing a review of the prologue through chapter 7 in this episode, and then we'll kind of keep moving forward that way. We will also be talking more about the Ajas of the Aes Sedai, the different colors and organizations, what they do, what they stand for, as well as some of the Forsaken. We talked about 3 of them last time, and this time we'll be talking about Lanfear and some of the Amaryllis and kind of the history of the White Tower and the Amaryllis seat. So we got a lot of good stuff to talk about. So we want to thank you guys for joining us here on this podcast episode. We will invite you to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you like it, make some comments if you feel like you need to, and we will respond, and that'll help us out a lot. It doesn't cost you much or anything really, but it helps us out a lot. So thank you in advance. But I do have my fellow Taviran with me. Let's get to it. We got Mark here joining us once again.
Hey guys, how's it going? Good to be here.
And we got our longtime, ongoing special guest, Kyle.
Hey everybody.
And I think at this point you're no longer a special guest.
You're graduated.
You're a Taviran now, a full Taviran.
Very nice.
Yeah, Kyle came on our podcast a while ago. We did one of the live podcasts for... I can't remember what it was called, but it's one of the podcasts, Wheel of Time podcasts, organized a live podcast, 24 hours straight of Wheel of Time podcasts. Yeah. And we invited Kyle on, and he stepped up and joined us. And ever since then, he's been part of it. So he has some good input. We appreciate that, Kyle.
Excited to be here, guys.
Yeah. So the prologue starts off. The last prologue was way in the past with Lews Therin and his demise, but this prologue is current day, and we got a darkfriend meeting. They're all gathered together. They're wearing masks. It's kind of like one of those parties where everybody wears masks and they don't know who the other person is. That's the vision I get with it anyway. And they're all waiting for the Dark One to show up, and there's some Trollocs come, and a Murderer shows up and calls them all worms, and tells them to kneel. And then, unfortunately, the Dark One doesn't show up, but Baalzamon shows up. He's back. What'd you guys think about Baalzamon showing up after he was supposedly dead in the last book? Rand supposedly killed him. Rand still thinks he killed him. So, I don't know, Mark, what'd you think about Baalzamon coming back? Still alive.
I think it goes to show that Rand has a long way to go, right? I mean, he thinks he killed him, he did everything right, but he doesn't understand the forces he's contending with yet, right? Mm-hmm. He still thinks everything's fought in the physical realm. He still thinks that where he was in the physical realm. And so, I think, it just goes to show how early it is in the book and how much he has to learn. And so I think it's kind of a good twist, right? I remember reading this the first time. I'm like, whoa, what the heck just happened? This guy's dead, and he's here. And it's actually pretty cool, I think. I think it goes to it kind of shows me that there's a deeper, darker meaning and story to all of this, and we're just getting started.
Yeah. Any thoughts from you, Kyle, on Balsamon.
In addition to that, I think it starts to illustrate the Dark One's power, right? And so to your point, Mark, first of all, Rand is just scratching the surface on the forces he's having to contend with. It also illustrates that the Dark One really has a lot of control over death, right, and how that actually works. And as we'll see later, I mean, Balsamon, and I guess spoiler alert, guys, but Balsamon comes back multiple times, right? And so, after being killed, quote unquote, right? And so, the great Lord of the Dark, or the Dark One, right, does have the control to bring his Forsaken and his followers back should he choose to. And so it's an interesting foreshadowing of the forces that the light will have to contend with going forward.
Yeah. Yes. And to your point, you bring up a good point, Kyle. There will be spoilers in this podcast. Moving forward from here on out, we will be discussing anything and everything related to the Wheel of Time, whether it's in this book, previous book, future books, in the white book, the black book. So if you're not wanting spoilers, you might want to read the book first, or the series first, actually, because we'll be going all over the place. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll try not to give up like the big plot points. I mean, some of it's good, but I mean, we're going to talk about things, so be ready for that. I know it kind of sucks for those new readers and stuff. We're not trying to push you out. We'll let you know, but we like this book. We've been reading it for 30 years.
Yeah.
So
it's been a while.
yeah. So you have your chance.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. So Shaitan is actually, it's not Shaitan, it's Balsamon. Is he pretending to be Shaitan? I think we talked about this last time. I think he's playing it up. He's letting it be like, oh, maybe I am. He's not like denying it, but he's not Shaitan. But people think it is.
Do you think he's playing it up, or he's just kind of lost his marbles a bit?
I think he's lost his marbles for sure.
And so he... Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
No, you finish.
I was going to say, I mean, he has a history of mental illness just due to sheer exposure to, the Dark One's power and taint and other things like that, right? And so the notion that he thinks or purports or says that he is the Dark One, he is Shaitan, kind of a thing, right? Mm-hmm. Is could be a symptom of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I think I mentioned this last time, that there was this huge void where he was the only one getting out of the bore, and he took on that role of Shaitan, right, of the Dark One, and I definitely think he's lost his marbles a bit, but he's not wrong either, right? He becomes nameless later. No one knows what that means if you haven't read the book yet, but he's definitely revered, and his place is well called for, like it's a well-deserved place. So I think that even though he may be rising above his station, it's not completely out of place either.
Yeah. Okay. And then the description of the book, it kind of describes his hands are all burned up, and there's some like injuries or something that appeared to be from fire, which is how he died in the last book. So there's some carryover there. So we're seeing this meeting through the eyes of a white cloak named Bors. He calls himself Bors in this place, is what he said. Do we know who Bors is? I can't remember if we find that out or not.
We do. We don't know it yet.
Okay. So it comes obvious later.
Yeah, I think he actually says it later. Do you want me to?
Yeah. Who is it?
Lay it out.
Who's Bors?
So this is a big big spoiler. So mute for like 30 seconds. It's Jakeem Carradine.
Okay.
Is that how you say his name?
I think so.
He's the leader of the
questioners.
Questioners, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, we find out. I want to say like book 11 or 12 is when we finally find that out.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Or maybe sooner. I can't remember. I think it's after he kills the Lord Commander.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when he takes control of the White Cloaks, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Cool. Yeah. So there's all types of people, different countries, different organizations, and you kind of describe some of them. There's a couple of Aes Sedai sisters there. Shinaran is there. some other nationalities. So everyone's, every culture, every group is kind of represented, involved in Balzamun's plan. And they're all shown images of Rand, Matt, and Perrin. This kind of sets the stage for the rest of the book. They're all shown images of Rand, Matt, and Perrin. And they're said, hey, you guys got to hunt for him. I think someone asks, should we kill him? And he's like, no, don't kill him. Just kind of find him. And then they're all given their own set of instructions. And Bors is like, oh, I wish I knew everyone else's because then I know what mine are, because then I could kind of figure it out and, do a better job, basically. So he wants to know everybody's plan, but he doesn't get it, and they all get their own set of instructions. So one question I had while I was reading this prologue is where are they meeting? Or does it matter? I mean, because it seemed like there was a really nice palace. There were servants there, blonde servants. So maybe it was like, is this Andor? Because that's kind of a blonde nation. So I don't know. Does it matter? Do you guys know? Speculate?
When I was reading it, I always envisioned it being one of the, I guess, palaces or in the borderlands that had been lost, right? And so
close to Shayel Ghul or something.
Close to Shayel Ghul.
Yeah, maybe.
And so, but I don't know exactly where it is. Mark, do you know?
I don't. It never really says. I don't think it ever comes to fruition. As far as we know, right? It could just be some construct of the dream world, right?
Yeah,
it could be too.
Yeah, I did think that, but it seemed too substantial. But anyways,
yeah. Okay.
So then it cuts. Bors is taken to his room and he wakes up back in reality. So that's the prologue. A pretty good setup for, good prologue for the book. I thought I liked it. So then it cuts to Rand and Lan sword fighting and practicing again, like we left them at the end of book 1. It's been about a month since the end of the last book, and there's Rand's still there. I mean, I think at the end of book 1 he was talking about leaving. He's like, I'm going to leave and go do my own thing, but yet he's still there. And while they're practicing, Rand is defending himself from Lan. He doesn't have the experience and the talent yet to beat Lan. I think he gets in a lucky duel every once in a while, but so he's backpedaling, and then there's some wind going on, and the wind kind of catches him, and Rand feels like there's a wall behind him, a wall of air, and he can't back up. So then Lan's thrust of the practice sword gets him in the chest, and it kind of splinters and causes an injury. And he's like, what happened? And Lan asks him, he's like, there was a wall there. I couldn't move. I was caught by the air. And Lan kind of looks at him. He's like, well, strange things happen at the Blight. He kind of just blows it off. Well, you're Ta'veren, and we're by the Blight. Something happened. But I took it more than that. I think Rand did too. Do you guys have any insight on what that could have been?
I think there's a couple theories, right? I mean, there's always the theory that somebody used the one power, right, and blocked him so that Rand could get hurt. There's also the notion that there was some sense to what Lan was saying, right, in that, random things happen near the Blight, but I mean, we'll see later in the book that some of these random things continue to happen as the Dark One breaks free, right, and we call them bubbles of evil, right, and so these bubbles of evil are quasi warpings of reality that essentially end up bringing terrible things happening to the people inside of the world here. And so there's a bunch of examples around what these bubbles of evil could be. Maybe this what I guess wall of wind could be an example of one of them. There's another one where it's a person that just keeps puking up beetles until they totally deflate. Yeah. Right? Yeah. There's another one where Rand sees himself in a reflection, right? All these different
mini Rands
start attacking, right? And doing terrible things. Inanimate objects come to life and start hurting people, all sorts of stuff, right? And these seem to happen more frequently as the Dark One continues to break free, right? And his hold on reality, or I guess his hold on the world, begins to warp the notions of reality, right? And so I'm wondering if this is the first glimpse of a bubble of evil, given that, one, we're so close to Shayel Ghul, and we'll see later in the book that doesn't really matter how close you are, right? But two, that that it's just, the Dark One is getting a better grip on warping what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that before you brought it up. With the notion or the theory that it was a weave of air holding him, it'd have to be an Aes Sedai, and the only Aes Sedai around was Moraine, or I guess Egwene or Nynaeve, but they wouldn't have done that. Neither would have Moraine. So I don't know if that theory holds any weight or not. So Bubble Evil. Do you have any thoughts, Mark, on what it could have been?
No, this was a weird one. I remember reading it when I was doing this reread and thinking that same thing. Like, was it a bubble of evil? Because it wasn't really this bubble of evil that we get to know, right? Mm-hmm. Where like chaos happens, people die, and stuff. And then normally when you see a bubble of evil, especially around Rand, it's offset by a bubble of good, right? Like I think it's explained in later books. Like, someone, I don't know, a door falls over and it hits a nail and someone gets run over by 10 cows, right? That's a bubble of evil. Whereas the same is for a bubble of good, right? Because of Rand's presence, a baby falls out a window, falls 55 stories, lands in a cloud, and everything's good, grows up to be a king, right? Like it's these kind of huge examples of good and bad. And obviously, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's pretty noticeable when they happen, and they usually offset each other. So I was looking for the offset, where here was this bubble of evil. Where's the bubble of good? Where's something crazy that happens, or to Varnish that happens? Yeah. And I didn't really see it. Yeah. So for me, I kind of chalked it to, this is one of the 55,000 lost storylines. Possibly. Right? This was meant to mean something, and then it just kind of got lost in this huge story, which is fine. But because Lan would have known if it was Moraine, right? He would have known that she was channeling nearby. He would have said something, I feel like. So I don't think it was her. It could be a bubble of evil. I just don't see the offset to it. Where was the opposite?
Yeah. Good points. So we don't know. If someone knows, comment on the video. Let us know what you think. So it'd be awesome to get that. They also talk about the heron mark sword that Rand has. We get a history lesson on this sword, right? Which is pretty cool. Lan explains about power wrought items, specifically swords. And his sword, the Malkier King's sword, was a power wrought sword, but it's not a heron mark sword, which I thought was surprising because he's a better swordsman. He's definitely a heron. He could carry that blade and be well respected with it. But he just has, I think he describes it just a normal soldier's blade at some point. But some of these power wrought blades survived 3,000 years from the Age of Legends through the breaking and have made their way into the hands of these people here. And they also talk about how there's a handful of heron mark swords that are power wrought by the Aes Sedai from the Age of Legends, and then there's some heron mark swords that are just modern day blacksmiths have made them, right? But Rand's is one from the Age of Legends, which is pretty cool. I like that. But we still don't know how Tam got it, right? To give to Rand, or who was in his house, right? So
he was in the Illianer army, right, and kind of proved himself to be a blade master there. But how that happened, I don't think we know.
Yeah, the closest we get is the prequel, New Spring, where Tam is there, but we don't really see much about him. It's about Lan and Moraine, but he's kind of there at one point, I think, or at least he fights in those battles. At least I don't think we really see him necessarily even. So I think that was one of the prequels. He was going to write New Spring. He was going to write how Tam left the Two Rivers, fought, came back with the sword and the baby, and then there was another one how Moraine and Lan showed up at the Two Rivers just in time before the Trollocs came, right? So those are going to be the three prequels. Well, we only got one of them.
Yeah, which would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I can't even mention why, because it would give up too much of a certain Aes Sedai that was caught up in everything. And she was from the Brown Aja.
Oh yeah, I think that's one
I
spoiler we should hold on to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jeez.
I'm not
Yeah.
gonna say right, but I'm just saying like that would have been an awesome story to read.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but this scene, I don't know about for you guys. I hate to jump in here.
Go
This
ahead.
scene was kind of like a low key, like thumbs up to Lan, and this is why.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking about this because remember he talks. This is a spoiler. It's a little bit spoiler for later. Remember he's talking or he's training him, and then he says, "I could make a blade master out of you in 5 years."
Yeah.
Okay, so this goes to show how good Lan really was. He was saying, "I need to give you 5 years to be that good," but he trained Rand for however long, and Rand goes and beats Turok,
Yeah. Which
who
I
is
don't
a
know.
blade master.
Right.
Right, he's a known blade master, and so I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, one, Rand's amazing for his age. Like, what the heck? Two, does that mean that Lan is so good that he's thinking, I need another 5 years to train you, when really I can train you to be a blade master in like a month? Right? Like, I'm like like, I think it's kind of like, oh, well, Lan's pretty freaking awesome, and we don't even know how awesome yet,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but he is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good angle to take. I wish we would have got more of them together, Rand and Lan, like because they were, he's kind of the foster dad or the alternate dad he doesn't have at this point. And he teaches them how to duel the sword. He teaches them how to talk to the Amerlin seat and walk. He does the walk through the Aes Sedai to go talk to the Amerlin seat a little bit later. Yeah, that was pretty cool. So he teaches us some really cool things. I wish we would have got more of that in this story, but we didn't. So while they're training, they talk, and then they see this procession coming. There's these trumpets and the Amerlin seat, and a bunch of Aes Sedai are coming to Faldar, and Rand just freaks out. He's like, I got to get out of here. They're coming for me. They're gonna gentle me. I'm gonna go to the White Tower, be a prisoner. Like all these terrible things he's thinking of, right? With reason. So he tries to escape. The next chapter is him trying to, he goes back to his room, gets his stuff. All his old stuff's taken, and now he has all these fancy clothes, and he doesn't like it, but he's like, whatever, I got to get out of here. But he can't. All the doors, like minutes before he gets to the doors or the stables to get his horse and leave, an order came down to have everything locked down. So he can't leave. So he meets up with Massima and another guy, I can't remember, another Shinar. And so and Massima plays a big role later on in the story. So we kind of get their first interaction, and he's grumpy. Rand later says he wasn't rude, but he was just cold to him, like indifferent. So that's kind of Massima's personality. He's always grumpy.
The other guy's name's Ragan.
Ragan, yes.
Yeah.
I think he goes with the group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, later on. So we'll see more of them as the story goes on and the story goes on. So but he can't get out. He ends up running into Matt and Perrin and Loyal. And like, okay, yeah, let's go. They want to go with him. They want to get out of there too. But he's like, no, you guys can't come with me. So he kind of is rude to them and says, you guys, I'm always trying to save you guys, having to save you guys. You guys can't take care of yourself without me. So they get in this fight, and they leave all mad. And so he's trying to protect them is what he's thinking. And so then he runs to Egwene. She's like, I know what you're doing. And that's so mean. And, so he's trying to get out. And Egwene says, well, let's go to the dungeons and hide. And Padan Fane's down there, and they get this really creepy feeling. And so they go up to the women's quarters and hide Rand there. Any thoughts on those events? They're pretty straightforward.
So I think you start getting a foreshadowing of who Padan Fane is and the effect he has on people.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? When they go down there. I mean, this is before really bad things start to happen down there, right? But
Yeah.
Egwene and Matt go down, and Egwene, notices that, these guards have always been nice to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've always been nice and kind and understanding, right? And now they're when Egwene and Rand go down there, they're very standoffish and kind of uptight, right? And you can see the beginnings of even all the cellmates around Pod on Fane starting to go crazy, right? And so just foreshadowing the notion that Pod on Fane is not only a dark friend, but something much, much worse, right? He has this effect that starts to really manipulate and change people.
It's almost, I want to say magic, but the magic in this story is the one power, and it's not the one power. But it's like this influence that exudes from him that he's able to exhibit or use power to change people's perspectives. Almost.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think that's from? Is it from like Machin Shin and Mashidar and all that?
I think they're ancient, right? It's not. I wouldn't say it's from the Dark One, right? I'm sure that the Dark One has his influence, right? But I feel like these are ancient evils that are beginning to form inside of Pod on Fane, right? You have the evil in Shadar Logoth, right? That tends to mature in Pod on Fane.
And he
right?
does mention Mordeth in these chapters, right?
He does.
And Mordeth is from Shadar Logoth.
Right. Yeah. And so that's the thing is I don't think it's Dark One evil. I think it's an amalgamation of all these evils, Dark One included, right? That begin to manifest through Pod on Fane. Not necessarily, it seems like magic in my mind, but it's more a separate type of power that Pod on Fane wields that obviously matures to something disastrous later, but beginning to kind of, I guess, spread his influence to the point to where not only will he be able to control people, but he'll be able to control Shadow Spawn in the future as well, right?
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, and this is the beginnings of his character. Like we saw the beginning from the Two Rivers to now, but like this is his evil character. This is where it starts, and he really takes form in this chapter.
And it gets so poignant to the point to where Murdral kind of start to. When somebody sees a Murdral or a Fade, right? It's fear, right? You feel that fear, that emptiness, that right. But it's like when Pod on Fane interacts with Murdral, so it's like it's reversed, right?
They're afraid of him.
They're afraid of Pod on Fane,
because
of the power and the influence that he wields, and so
that's an interesting, very important fact to bring up because we'll see it throughout the rest of the series. So, any thoughts on that, Mark?
He gets more and more evil. Really, I think he's the embodiment of all the evil in the world that's not necessarily, aligned. For example, the Dark One, right? You've got his influence. He was his hound. You have Mordeth, who's from Eredhall, with different kind of evil, the greed, all that stuff. And then Machin Shin, right? That comes from the ways. And he absorbs all of them and becomes something else.
Yeah.
Right? Something greater than each one of them. And it came so bad, right, that even though the Forsaken knew who he was, they steered clear of him. Even though, Midril steered clear of him. The good side everyone was just like, okay, we don't know what this dude is, but, no one was touching him. Like, Slayer didn't go after him.
Yeah.
Right? None of the Forsaken went after him. Everyone was just like, leave this dude alone. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
very, very dynamic character.
I feel like of all the characters that were completely underdone in the end of the books, his was the most, right? Because he could have been, whatever he was, I feel like, was much different but much greater than the pieces that were on the board already.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tragic that didn't play out.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. That's my thoughts on Pod on Fane. I know I kind of went deep there, but
that's fine. That's good. All right, so then Rand hides out in the women's quarters. Egwene sneaks him in because they'll never look for him there. Excuse me. And then we cut to Moraine's point of view. She's there and in her room, just chilling. Leandrin and Anaya, Leandrin's of the red Aja, Anaya's of the blue. They come to her door and say, hey, the Amaryllis seat wants to see you. So they escort her there. And they kind of fill her in on what's been going on since she's been out wandering the world in the past year or so. They tell her that 3 false dragons have risen up in the past year, where previously it was like 3 in 3 years or something like that. And one of them is Mazrim Tame, I believe, and then the other 2 can't channel. They were just warriors or something like that. And then Elaine, they tell her that Elaine and Gawain have come to the tower for their training from Andor. They also tell Moraine that she's been gone too long. Like, no one knows what she's doing. She needs to come back, and they kind of imply that she's gone rogue. She's doing her own thing, not listening to anybody, and they don't like that. And then I also noticed during the reread that Leandrin's kind of acting strange. She seems distracted. She's just kind of looking around, lost in thought, and that sort of thing, which I'll get back to later. And then Moraine notices that. They go to the Amaryllis seat. The keeper's there. Leandrin is there. They talk for a while, the 3 of them, and then Leandrin's excused, and they really get down to business. And they talk about, we find out that they're like best friends. They grew up together in the tower. They were novices together and accepted and all that. So they've known each other for a few years. And really their plan, they reveal the whole plan right here, is that their plan was to find the dragon reborn, because we find out that they were there when the foretelling came out that the dragon was reborn. And so they were like, well, we got to find him. We got to do something. We read about that in New Spring, which at this point hadn't been written yet. So this is kind of the basic of it all that we got at that time. So they're gonna find him and train him and protect him from the Reds to have him ready for the last battle. And I don't know, what do you guys think about that plan? Mark, any thoughts on their big plan?
That plan was awesome, and they did it very well.
Okay.
So no, I like how. It kind of splits it, right? You've got one person that helps make this plan, who sits, behind the scenes, and you have one that's out there doing it. And it's kind of cool to see, like, look, we had this plan. What the heck, what the hell are you doing? And she's like, okay, listen to me. That plan's not going to work.
Yeah.
We found him, but and it's kind of a neat, I think, realization from Moraine, and I think that's kind of why we need that book that was never written, because I think some of it will go into there, how she knew to go to to Emmons Field in the first place, what led her there, because from the beginning, like, you can kind of see that while she kind of is like, well, we should take him to the tower, she doesn't really ever plan to take him to the tower.
Mm-hmm. That's
like,
a bad idea.
Something changed her mind prior to this, in that 20 years. So we don't really know. I mean, definitely a good plan to start. Super naive, right? Like, we're going to capture the dragon and keep him bundled up in the corner, and then somehow here save all our lives.
Yeah, that was the point I give too. It is a good plan, but yes, naive.
Oh, terribly naive. I always thought it was interesting, the roles, that you mentioned, Mark, one's kind of sitting behind the scenes in the tower, obviously in the most influential position being the Amaryllis seat, right? But and then the other one's out and adventuring. I thought it was interesting how they ended up in those roles, right? Thinking about their history.
Yeah.
Moraine is this Kyrian and noble, right? That is very adept at playing the game of houses, right? Which is basically the lifeblood of Kyrian, right? Mm-hmm. Sawan is a fisherman's daughter from Tyr, right? Mm-hmm. So you would think that Moraine would be far, far more adept at being an Amaryllis seat, right? Mm-hmm. Given her experience with, I would say, leadership, nobility, intrigue, game of houses, all that fun stuff, right? And Sawan would be far more adept at adventuring and finding the dragon reborn. And so, anyways, I always thought it was interesting that their roles, given their history, were quasi-reversed,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that is an interesting point. So I think their plan, they get to the point where we have to excuse Mark. He has to take a phone call, business calls. He'll be back. But so they get there, they start talking about it, and they bring up, well, that's not going to work because he's too stubborn. He's not going to do what we ask him to do. He's going to do his own thing. So we can push, and then he'll just run away, or we can just let him do his own thing and then catch up with him later. Mm-hmm. Is what it sounds like. So she says, well, my plan now is I'm going to send these 3 boys to Ilion with the horn. And when they get there, they'll be heroes because they found the horn. And all these hunters will be there. The armies of Ilion will be there. And then he can proclaim himself to be the dragon. And everybody will join forces and he'll lead them. Right. So that's kind of her plan. And so I think it sounds like Swan's like, okay, so we'll do that. But they also talk about how if their plan is found out, like if it's found out that Swan and Moraine came up with this thing, then she's going to be deposed and stilled. She'll be the 3rd Amerlin seat to be stilled.
Big deal.
Yeah, huge deal. And I think, and then they start to get into the power struggles of the tower just a little bit. Previously, so Swan talks about how the green have now aligned with the red, and the red are always trying to take power. Their thing is power and control and stealing men who can channel, or gentling men who can channel. So the green and the red have aligned when historically the green and the blue have always aligned, have been partners. And it all comes down to which color of Aja the current Amerlin seat is, or has been, right? So the 2 Amerlins that got deposed and stilled were of the red. So that's a big embarrassment for them. And since the second one, there hasn't been a new red Amerlin seat for like generations. So they're bitter about that still. And the greens, there's been a lot of blue Ajas that are blue Aes Sedai that have been Amerlin seats recently. So everyone's starting to feel like these blues are kind of taking over the tower. We want something different. And so that's why the greens start to align with the red, because they're thinking, well, maybe we can get a green on the seat.
Right.
That's kind of how I read it. And I think that's pretty interesting how there's a story and then you got these undercurrents in the story that Jordan creates. That's really interesting. And
oh yeah.
So
yeah, the tower politics are something to behold. It's just, you have these, you could kind of compare them to, modern day politics in their ferocity and I guess undercurrent in the sense that while the sisters are all one, all the Aes Sedai are one body, right?
Yeah.
They're very divided in thought processes, influence, and interests even, right? And so I think we want to get into the Ajas now, or should we do that? Let's do that a little later, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's always interesting seeing how these political undercurrents align with their overall Aja purpose, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But that kind of plays into why certain ones align with others, right? And how that power and influence is gained through that, through these temporary alliances that ultimately kind of promote, I guess, control in the tower. And then ultimately, given that the Aes Sedai are kind of the main power in the world, or in the known world, right?
Yeah.
It's, in their known world, the power there. So
yeah. So they talk about that, and Moraine at first is like, she's kind of paranoid about this. But, they're making moves to get, I don't know if they want to get rid of Swan. I don't think, because they don't know the plan, so they don't really have a reason to get rid of her, but they're trying to do, and I don't know if they can vote out in Amerlin, if that works, or, I don't know that process as far as once they're in, do they serve till they die, or, I don't know. So, Mark, we're talking about how the green and the red are conspiring against the blue to get rid of Swan, and she's kind of thinking about things, and how there's only been 2 Amerlin seats prior who have been deposed and stilled, and they were red Aja, and so they're trying to get rid of the blue Aja off the Amerlin seat. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I kind of heard what you were saying. I don't
Okay.
think there's a way to vote out an Amirlin, right? Once they're in Amirlin, how do you guys pronounce it? How do you guys say it?
I say Amerlin.
Yeah, I say Amerlin.
Amirlin. Okay. So once you're an Amirlin, you're there till you die.
Yeah.
I mean, they're there till they die. The So I don't think there's a way. However, the Amerlin only has so much power, right? It's kind of like the president, right? I mean, it has power, but it's limited to, right? They have to follow the hall, is what they call it, right? They have to follow the voice of the hall and things like that. And I think it's always been blues and greens were allied. But with this whole change and how the world is going, like everyone sees it, it's kind of going like all this stuff's happened, right?
Right. All this bad stuff.
Yeah, I think they mentioned the hunt for the horn was called, and nobody knew it.
Yeah.
Morgaze is doing things that they don't like. There's riots in the streets, there, and there's all this upheaval.
Yeah.
And
they don't think she can handle it, right?
Yeah, and the Aes Sedai have been kind of taken, taken from the side. Like they're not ready for it. You have all these, dragons popping up left and right, and so I think that the Red kind of see an opportunity to take power sooner than later. Now, whether it's a long game or a short game, we will wait and see. But
Find out.
but because Swan is super young, she Aes Sedai I think lived for a few hundred years. She's maybe 50-ish
Yeah, maybe.
at this point, maybe 50-ish, and so she's going to be around a while. And so it's kind of like a long game, but I mean, there's ways to take power without deposing the Amarillin too. How do you freaking say it?
Just say how you like it. It's hard. It's hard with these words. These
Yeah,
made-up words.
they're all spelled weird.
Yeah. Yeah, those are good points. So they did talk. You mentioned Elida, or no, Morgaze, and Elida was the counselor to Morgaze, Elida of the Red Aja. We saw her last book. They mentioned that she came to the tower with Elaine, and she's staying there, which they thought was, hey, what's she doing? And I think, and then they started talking about how, well, Elaine's going to be super powerful. She's going to be the most powerful Aes Sedai ever. Elida found her, brought her to their tower, so the Red are getting a lot of clout. Like, ooh, that gives them like some power that they can use. But then Moraine's like, well, I've got two people from the Two Rivers who are, one's the same level as Elaine, and the other one's going to be the most powerful Aes Sedai ever. So I think we're good.
Well, and I think it's good to note too. So it's weird because they never really go into a lot of politics. I mean, they talk about it over the course of 13, 14 books. So we kind of learn over time. But to kind of understand the Aes Sedai really put a lot of emphasis in individual power. Okay, so if I'm individually powerful, then I have a lot of clout, when it comes to Aes Sedai politics.
Right.
And Elida, aside from now maybe, because I'm pretty sure Swan and Moiraine now are more powerful, but at the beginning, Elida was the most powerful Aes Sedai in the tower.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no one else more powerful than her, and
In the tower.
In the
Yeah.
tower, right? Yes, and so, but she also knew that Moiraine and Swan would become more powerful than her.
Mm-hmm.
But now Swan is the Amirlin seat, and so she is kind of out of the politicking game, as far as that level goes. And Moiraine has been gone. She has not been involved. So up until now, really, Elida is revered as one of the most powerful, influential Aes Sedai members. And now she's bringing, the daughter Heir, who is super powerful. So this really does give her a crutch. I mean, she is probably, aside from Swan, the most powerful, influential Aes Sedai in the tower.
That's a good point.
That worries Swan Sanche, right? Because now she's like, this is unchecked, and I can personally do nothing to check it.
Mm-hmm. And part of their plan was, well, no one's going to remember that we were novices together. I think they mentioned that. As long as no one remembers that, we're going to be good because they won't put us together that we're working together. But Elida knows. She remembers that they were best friends.
Yep.
She is going to be aware of that going in. And as a side note, Swan, she mentions that she has the talent of seeing ta'veren, and she saw Rand. He was like a bright sun, one of the most powerful ta'verens ever. And Maureen's like, yep. And there's two more of them, Matt and Perry. So.
How is it? It seems like everybody has this talent.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like it's like everybody just happens to know. Like Elida has it, Swan has it, Loyal has it. The guy across the street has it, but Rand and them just have no idea what it is about it.
Yeah. I always found that a little weird. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah, I swear, it's like everybody that meets them knows it except them, and the whole time they're like, I'm not this person, like it's just random. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then it switches to a point of view from Jeffrem Bornhall, who's a White Cloak leader. Have we met him before this? I don't think we did.
No, I think this is the first time we meet Jeffrem.
Yeah. And so he is kind of he's journeying through the land, and he's kind of reflecting on things, remembering things. And he was told by Pedron Nile, the White Cloak leader, the head guy, to leave Caemlyn and go to Almouth Plain and meet someone. And Bornhold's like, well, I'm about ready to take over Caemlyn. Things are falling apart. Morgase, light is gone. Morgase is vulnerable. I can do something here. Take over Caemlyn. They don't. There's factions within Caemlyn that will align with us, that we can put in power, and then we will control Caemlyn, basically, right? And possibly depose Morgase. But he was forced to withdraw. He had to leave due to Niall's orders. And then they later meet up with questioners to fight the strangers that are entering Toman Head and all that area, which we find out later of the Shan-Chan. So here's a tidbit of information that is dropped that doesn't really make sense till later. So what if Elida leaving left Morgase open, left her vulnerable, and then the White Cloaks had their chance, they left, and then what happens to Morgase later in the next book? One of the Forsaken shows up and kind of takes over through her. So if Elida hadn't left, or if the White Cloaks had done something, do you think that would have happened, or would it have played out differently, or not?
Elida would have been disappeared.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean it's a Forsaken, right? I mean he's not gonna, or she ends up working. Now he has the Queen and the Aes Sedai.
Okay,
right.
So it wouldn't have mattered. You don't think?
No.
Okay.
I think we probably would have had it. So going with the notion that, let's say, the White Cloaks control Caemlyn, right? And Elida, the White Cloaks obviously don't like Aes Sedai, right? And Elida gets sent away. Morgase is no longer in power. I think it would have been, to Mark's point, it's a Forsaken. I think, through, perhaps some of the White Cloaks that are darkfriends, right? I think they probably would have come to a similar outcome with Caemlyn, right? With the fact that, yep, they control it, but that Forsaken could then just use that different avenue.
Okay. So same result?
Probably the same result, in my opinion.
Makes sense. Okay. All right. Then we switch to the point of view of Liandrin, who at Faldara. And she's walking through the halls, and she feels like someone's watching her. Like Rand was feeling it earlier in the book. Now she's feeling it. So I'm still wondering, what is this watcher? Any thoughts on, is it Paladin Fane? Because he keeps looking up. He's in the basement, in the cellar, in the dungeons. And he keeps looking up. Like he knows where people are. Aes Sedai and Rand. So is it him, or is it someone else that's kind of stalking? We know something happens later with, is it a gray man that shows up? Or a darkfriend tries to kill Amberlyn's seat? Or Rand? But is it that guy, or does it matter? It just gives this sense of foreboding that.
I always thought it was some sort of dark entity, but the more I think about it, the more I think it was. I think it was a combination of both Pod on Fane's influence, as well as preparations for what happens here soon, right? That things are on edge. People feel like they're being watched. It's all kind of starting to come to a head.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, did you have a comment, Mark?
No, I was just agreeing. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, it's just kind of a combination of things.
Foreshadowing. Okay, so she goes to Amalise, who's Lord Agelmar's sister, and she threatens her that if she doesn't help her, she's going to out her and her brother, Lord Agelmar, as darkfriends. And so she's like, I'll do whatever you want. And she tells him to search for Rand, Matt, and Perrin, because she's looked for him, can't find him. So she's like, you find her, get everyone you can involved to find them. So she agrees to do that. And throughout this whole process, we find out that Liandrin's a darkfriend, and she's of the Black Aja. So that was interesting. Kind of sets it up.
There's a Black Aja.
Yeah. Black Aja
Sorry.
verified.
My kids are calling now. Sorry, I apologize.
It's okay.
I apologize.
And then the last line of that, or last paragraphs of that chapter is someone comes into Paddon Fane's cell to help him escape. He's like, oh, I didn't think it would be you. That's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Do we know who that is? I think it's revealed.
I think it's revealed. At this point in the book, I'm like, oh, it's got to be one of those two guards that he influenced. But the way he says it,
Yeah.
I don't think it was.
Yeah.
I think it's somebody else, right? I always thought it could have been Ingtar, but I don't know.
That's what I think it is.
And so I'm pretty sure it is Ingtar.
Mm.
Mark, you can correct us when you come back.
Yeah, let us know. So then it moves on. Rand is having a nightmare. He's back in his house. Trollocs are breaking in. Murderall comes in. The Red Aja comes in to capture him. He wakes up and he's talking with Nynaeve. Nynaeve's there. He's in the women's quarters. And Nynaeve says that, Egwene's gone to talk to Paddon Fane. And Rand's like, that's a bad idea. What are you doing letting her go down there? And he's like, well, she likes talking to him. He's like, come on, guys. He's like, super creepy.
This is a terrible idea.
I know.
Terrible idea.
Why are you doing that? So she's gone that one. And Nynaeve's like, well, she's going to take Matt and Perrin down there. It'll be okay. And Rand's like, what? What are you doing?
That's worse.
Yeah. So then right then an alarm goes off and the keep just explodes. Everyone's like, we're under attack. And people are running around trying to figure out what's going on. Rand runs out. This is probably one of the funnest parts of this first few chapters. He runs through the women's quarters he's all haggard with a sword, and all the women are like, what? They start freaking out. Like, what are you doing here? And so he runs off to go fight the Trollocs. He runs in face first into Swan. They kind of look at each other, and Rand's like, she knows who I am. And
Yep.
runs off. But he runs into some Trollocs. He tries to fight him, but he kind of stumbles and doesn't do a good job. But luckily, some more Valdarans show up and help him out and kill those Trollocs. And then he meets up with the Murdraw. He's like, oh, I don't know. But then Ingtar shows up behind him and takes the Murdraw, and he runs off to the dungeons. And he gets down there, and he sees a message scrolled on the wall. Like the two guards that we talked about earlier are dead, beheaded and eaten by the Trollocs. But he sees a message written on the wall from Paddon Fane. Something about, I'll meet you in Toman Head. And there was another phrase, I forget. But so he knows it's Paddon Fane because he's said the same thing to her earlier.
Yep.
So he starts to scrub it off, and then Liandrin shows up. He's like, what are you doing, boy? She accuses him of being involved in all of this. And he's like, no, I got to go find Egwene. And she uses the power on him, right? And he thinks he's going to die at some point. He feels this intense pressure, and he's like, she's going to kill me. And then Moraine shows up.
Right.
And Leander's like, oh, crap.
I think that power is a form of, I think it was compulsion, wasn't it?
That's, yeah. Knowing what we know throughout the whole series, yeah.
Yeah.
coming back to it. Yeah.
And so compulsion is one of those. I think we'll learn later about forbidden weaves that Aes Sedai are not allowed to use. Right, one's balefire, one's compulsion. Compulsion essentially allows you to take control of or compel somebody else to do your bidding. Right, and it's interesting when they describe the weave. It's like it's a knot that goes over the victim's brain, more or less, right? And is almost impossible to undo, right? Particularly with those that are very skilled at it, right? And I think I think Leandrin also uses it on Amelisa,
Yeah.
right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Or earlier on, who is Lord Aglamar, is Lord Aglamar's sister, right? And so, anyways.
Yeah, she said that she learned that that was her trick that she learned as a child.
Right.
To use that weave.
Exactly. So I mean that's the interesting thing, and kind of re-emphasizes the fact that Leandrin not a good person, right?
Yeah.
Part of the Black Aja. Black Aja obviously does not adhere to the rules that Aes Sedai are supposed to, right? And use those forbidden weaves like compulsion. Obviously, it doesn't work on Rand, and so
Moraine shows up and Leandrin. I got the impression she just kind of stopped.
Right.
She didn't want to be found out. So then Rand runs down there. Moraine Egwene and Matt are unconscious. Padden Fane's gone with the dagger. He took it from Matt, and they're okay. They're just unconscious, and Moraine heals them, and that's kind of how it ends up.
Yeah. It's kind of a grim scene down there, though, right?
Yes.
I mean, the prisoners are now completely insane.
Killing themselves,
hurting themselves. The message, was it scrawled in blood? I think it was in blood, right? So it's gory down there, right? Bad things have been happening, and there's Trolloc script on the walls, right? Which is for you Lord of the Rings fans out there, it's like Mordor script. It's bad stuff, right?
Dark tongue.
Dark tongue, which interestingly, right? The Brown Aja is skilled at understanding, learning, and interpreting.
Yes.
Right. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later about, kind of the Brown Aja's responsibility and stuff like that. But it's not a good place to be down there.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that last sequence with Padden Fane's escape, Mark?
Who did it?
Yeah, who let him out?
Who done it? Right? I mean, we know of 3 dark friends that are there right now. Right? So which of the 3 did it? Did all 3 of them have a part to play in it to do something? Or did just one of them do it? Right? Because I don't know. Right? Obviously, we know Leandrin was involved in something because she says, I've got a lot to do tonight. But we also know one of the other ones was involved as well. And they admitted it later in the book.
We brought his name up already.
Oh, we know Ingtar, right, was involved too. He opened a gate or something or the other, right?
Yeah.
So, were all 3 of them involved or just the 2?
Who's the third one?
Somebody that we cannot name yet.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. Yes. Okay. So yeah, there's 3 at least.
I was always on the notion that it was a combination of both of them, right? I think Leandrin set the scene. Ingtar opened the gate. Leandrin made it so that Ingtar could go and open the gate, whether it was clearing people out or, having people be on other errands. Leandrin started the atmosphere. Ingtar set the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Did Ingtar open the gate?
I think he did. I think Ingtar did it.
No, he opened the gate, but was he the one that opened the cell?
Oh.
I think... that's a good point. That's a good point.
He knew him, right? Padden Fane's like, oh, like he was surprised. It's like, it's you. that's a surprise, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and he's obviously surprised. I don't think at that point he had met Leandrin, so he wouldn't know her.
He wouldn't be surprised by Ingtar showing up. He just like, oh,
because Ingtar let him in. Well, Ingtar opened the gate, right? He knows Ingtar.
but he'd just be like, oh yeah, he's a Shinar and darkfriend. Though, like, he's not an Aes Sedai. If an Aes Sedai like Leandrin showed up, he'd be like, oh, he would be surprised.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or maybe
That's a
this
good
other
point.
person that we're not talking about right now.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
That's why I'm wondering. Like, I'm like, who freed Pat and Payne? I don't actually know if we know.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Oh, well, I just looked it up.
Okay. Google is our friend.
Yeah, it says, in an interview, Robert Jordan stated that Ingtar was the one who freed Pat and Payne. The cell is darkest seems to seem to pick survival of Matt Negri. However, it's not source, leave it ambiguous yet again, blah, blah. But I guess it was Robert Jordan that confirmed that.
Okay. Whew. I'm not arguing against it, but I don't see why he'd be surprised.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I always thought it was Ingtar, but now that I think about it, why would Padan Fain be surprised about Ingtar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. So now we know. All right. So that's chapters 1 through 7 of The Great Hunt. Really good book. The Eye of the World is really good. The Great Hunt is that much better. So I can't wait to get into it even more. We learn a lot more about the Dark One, not necessarily the Dark One, but the Forsaken and the Dark One's servants, I guess you could say, and more about Padan Fain, which is great. And Rand, he goes off on his own at some point with some help, but he leaves the group. So great story. Can't wait to talk more about the rest of the chapters as we go along. So that's it for the chapter review. We are going to talk about Lanfear.
Yeah, Lanfear. So
You're muted.
So we just hear a little bit about Lanfear in the Dark Prophecy, right? They talk about was the daughter of the night, et cetera, and they say, oh, that must be referring to Lanfear. It says nowhere in its recorded history does it write her name down, but I thought that we learn all their names through the 113 or whatever pages, right?
Yeah. Her name's out there. I saw it on Twitter the other day, last week. I can't remember what it is though right now. I'll look it up.
Well, it's Mierin Aranel or something.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know how to pronounce these names. Okay, Mierin Aranel. That's what we're going with. Prove me wrong. Let's fight. You know what I'm saying? So, who she is? Okay. So Lanfear, she was Age of Legends, and she was actually connected to Luz Theron Telamon, who is, we all know, is the Dragon Reborn.
Yep.
The Dragon Reborn is also Rand. I hate to be a spoiler. There we go. It's out there. So anyways, they at some point were connected. We don't really know how. They were dating. They were together. She was in love with him. He was in love with her. We don't really know how deep that relationship went. But at some point, he left the relationship. And it states that he left because she wasn't in love with him. She was in love with who he was.
Right.
And everything that came with it. He was super popular. He is probably the most popular, famous man of his age.
This is Luz Theron, right?
As Luz Theron, yes.
Yeah.
And so, he wanted someone to love her. And there was quite a few outbreaks. There's written stories of her, basically saying, his new wife stole him from me and all this stuff. And so, but she's in love with him. She wants him. She spent the rest of the war trying to put him back under her spell or whatever that means. And, she really lived in the shadow or in the dream world.
Yeah.
Right? And tell Aaron Ryad.
Yeah.
And she was a master of it. It's also thought that aside from Ishmael, more than Agenor, she was the most powerful Forsaken. So she is definitely up there. She's very powerful. They don't know much about what she did. She served as a governor during the War of Power. That much we know. She was not a field commander, and she was sealed deep in the Bore. So she didn't age, kind of like Agenor did in Bothamel.
Yeah.
But she stayed young, and I think it mentions her here. It says she's free. We find out later she is free, and she's taken on a name. I'm going to leave that little quiet until we run into her. But, she is out and about, and she is very dangerous. What she's doing now, I think, is unclear, right? Until we see her later, I don't think we ever know what she was up to. But another thing of her past I thought was interesting is she was part of, it was a science group, right? It was like this scientific, they found the Bore. They found the hole where the Dark One lived, and she was part of that team. And if I remember right, she was the only one of that team to survive the explosion when they broke into it to let the Dark One free, so to say.
And they thought it was like a source of power, right? They didn't realize it was the Dark One. And they're like, well, some people are saying, oh, it's the Dark One, don't go in there. And her group were like, no, it's a source of power that we could tap into and use, and blah, blah, blah. And then they were wrong. Is that kind of how it went down? That's what I remember.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. They thought it was, this power beyond what they understood. With
maybe the true power? Maybe?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so they bored into it, and there was just this huge explosion, right? It destroyed. I'm trying to remember what it was called. That place that they were at.
Yeah, Sharam, wasn't it? No. I'm reading about it here.
Yeah. So you're correct. So it says there's little doubt that she was surprised as the rest of the world to discover what actually lay beyond the hole she helped create, and she was indeed fortunate to be one of the few to survive that destroyed the Sharam. So that's I think the Sharam is like the science building is what it was.
Right.
And destroyed the Sharam and most of the Kalam Dawn.
Yeah.
Damn, stupid words. Anyways, so she, I guess it said there were a few survivors, but she, after that, turned to the dark side. She followed the rest there, but hers were completely selfish reasons. It is good to note that she is the only Forsaken that got to choose her name, because most of the other names were given by people that had been betrayed by the Forsaken. They gave them these names for whatever reason, but she chose her own name as Lanfear. And I don't know what importance that is. Like, I don't think they ever described. They just, maybe it's because she went so willingly. But by the sound of it, like Agenor went willingly.
Yeah.
Bothamel went willingly. All these others went super willingly. Agenor went before she did. We know that. But she chose her own name.
And it means daughter of the moon? Or night or something?
It means... Why do you have to answer these questions?
We ask the hard questions on the 4th Taviran.
I know. Daughter of the night.
Yeah.
In the old tongue.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. What do you think, Kyle? Lanfear, any thoughts?
I think another interesting thing about Lanfear is her control over Teleron-Riyadh.
Yeah. Yeah, how did she get so good at that?
She is, in the White Book it says she's credited with driving a number of people mad and driving others to suicide, as well as performing outright assassinations in Teleron-Riyadh.
Dang.
Right?
She's vicious.
So she can, we've talked about Teleron-Riyadh in the past, right? It's a dream world. People go in there, it's like an alternate reality, right? Where things work a little bit differently, right? But a lot of the times you can come out of. Teleron-Riyadh is a very dangerous place, but really you gotta wake up, right? Being able to assassinate people in Teleron-Riyadh is something aside, and then you'll notice later in the book when she talks to other people. who start to gain access to Tel'aran'rhiod, right, and start become expert, right, that she's almost offended at the fact, right? She's saying like, no, this is mine, right?
Yeah,
this
it's
place
my
is
place.
mine.
Yeah.
I am the ruler here, right? And so, anyways, she is very, very adept at controlling, manipulating, and being in Tel'aran'rhiod. I don't know that the question I always had, and maybe some spoilers a little bit here, but between Slayer and Lanfear, who's more powerful in Tel'aran'rhiod?
Perrin.
Perrin wins.
I would say Lanfear was Slayer had this way, like he was more sneaky. I don't know. He was pretty powerful.
He's pretty powerful
Yeah.
there. I mean, he doesn't use the one power.
Yeah, he doesn't have the power.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but I
But in
mean,
the dream world, he would. Right? He could.
I don't know, could he?
does he? I mean,
right? He can be anything, right? He can
oh yeah.
turn into a freaking dog. He can turn into, like, he creates weapons. Like,
Yeah.
he can do whatever he wants there.
So it begs the question: does the power? I mean, the power is a thing in Tel'aran'rhiod, right? But I would argue that is, unlike the physical world, that is second tier to being able to your point, Mark, manipulate Tel'aran'rhiod as you wish, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, as Perrin said, it's just a weave.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Greatest line.
Right?
One of the greatest lines in the series.
Yeah, it's just a weave. And so, even though she has the power, I think that's nullified by Slayer's ability. Like, I think Slayer could stop a weave like that if he wanted.
Yeah.
I have no doubt. Who is more powerful? That's a good one.
I always kind of landed. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, sorry. I would say Lanfear, mostly because of the amount of time she has spent with it. I mean, she spent hundreds of years before the breaking,
right?
And then now, and whereas, Slayer spent 25, 30, maybe 40 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would tend to agree. I think Lanfear, boots to boots is more powerful because I think she not only knows how to manipulate Tel'aran'rhiod, right? But she kind of has the power as an added bonus, right? The other thing, to your point, Mark, is her experience in there. But I think Lanfear's downfall is her pride, right? I think in a toes to toes fight, maybe Lanfear wins, but not hand over fist. I think Slayer would put up a really good fight with the notion that Lanfear would maybe be caught monologuing to a certain extent, right? Because she's so prideful about her ability to control.
Yeah.
Anyways, an interesting thought.
What about Mogadine?
Oh, good question.
She's good too.
She's also good.
She's in, well, they're all in Tel'aran'rhiod at some point, but she's not a master of it, right?
Well, this is what it says in the Bible. Okay? It says this. Her greatest asset was her ability within the world of dreams. Within its dimensions, her skills surpassed even Lanfear's.
Whoa.
Really?
Matter's claim of sovereignty.
Interesting.
And then it goes, she never dared confront or challenge Lanfear in the world of flesh, for there she could not hope to match Lanfear's superior strength. So,
Mogadine is top dog?
that's according to this, in the world of dreams. But then it's weird how her downfall came, right? When she got caught much later by
Nynaeve?
Nynaeve.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Nynaeve
Yeah.
that caught her?
I think so.
Right? Because it's like, well, you should have recognized that you could just overpower it. And I don't know if it was just a panic, like she panicked because she had never been like put in a position where she had to think like that or what. But I mean, it says right here, she's more powerful. So
Interesting.
take Lanfear out of the equation. Does Mogadine beat Perrin? because those two kind of went back and forth, right? I think Mogadine and Perrin went at it once, and it was. I mean, they both walked away, but I never saw that Mogadine was scared either.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna have to read about that. I'm gonna have to do some research. Yeah. To your point, I mean, Perrin wins in my opinion. Perrin's absolute. Not Perrin now. Perrin much later when he's established that control through with his wolf brothers. But between Mogadine and Slayer. I think Mogadine takes it there, right? Absolutely, because you just read it, right? She doesn't have that pride or that not altruistic, but that self-respecting blocker that Lanfear has, right? So, yeah, I think tier-wise, it's Perrin, Mogadine, and then maybe Lanfear and Slayer, kind of even keel, maybe.
Yeah.
What about Hopper?
I like Hopper, but I don't think he's up there.
Yeah, I think he gets destroyed.
I think he is limited by actually being a wolf.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like I don't think his thoughts geared that way. Right?
Yeah.
Like I think he can understand, he can teach.
Yeah, he knows the rules and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think like he would have the creativity, from his limitations of actually being a wolf. Yeah. So I think, he would be below all of them.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. All right. So Lanfear, she's amazingly beautiful. I'm really interested to see how they portray her in the TV show. I mean, because that is clear as a bell throughout the whole series. She is like one of the hottest women in the whole series, right? Mm-hmm. So she better be pretty good looking.
I think there's like her and the Mayim lady. Anyways, those are the two that I think you've got to cast really well as far as that goes. Because, I mean, it talks about, it's kind of like, I don't know, casting, some random, I'm just trying to think.
Bearlane. That's her name.
Yeah. Yeah, she's got to be.
I think both of them have to be really good looking, but classy too, right? Whereas Graendal needs to be really good looking, but she's slutty, right? She's
it's kind of skanky.
She's kind of a skanky person.
Yeah, definitely.
Natasha O'Keefe.
Yeah, I know they casted her, but I look at the picture, I'm like, well, yeah, maybe. But they can do things with makeup, and she's not ugly, but she's not.
I don't know.
She's not a Lanfear,
not
at least
that
in the
much makeup.
In the casting pictures. She's not a Lanfear to me.
No, like I'm looking at her. I mean, she's got to be pale, right? And I think that's kind of what they get from this. And then she's got the dark black hair, which all match. But I don't see it either.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe.
Could happen.
We got to see. We got to see.
We'll see the production stills and make a judgment.
The good news is that if we have anything from season 1 to take away from, we know it'll be spot on. That's really good. I'm excited now.
Because they did that with Tom Maryland, right? Spot on.
Right, it's just been, almost scene for scene, really. Anyways, so I guess, we'll give it a chance, and see. I'll take a look.
Yeah.
But, I think...
Lanfear is one of my favorite Forsaken.
Yeah.
She's kind of like that. She's not evil, as like some of them are. She's a bad person, but I think she has her intention. She has her agenda. She's not bad because she's maybe she is, but I haven't got the impression that she's like what was the first guy, last book,
Agenor
or Bartholomew. She's not like one of those in my mind.
I feel like she's selfish,
Yes.
right? She's the reason she's allied with the Dark One is because that was a quicker way to power to fuel her selfish agenda.
Right. As opposed to the others who like to create obscenity. I don't know if that's the right word, but create evil people, evil creatures to do evil things. Right. She's not that type.
And you see, I mean, she frequently, talks to the Dragon Reborn and says, "You and I teamed up. We can overthrow the Dark One."
Yeah.
Like, she's not allied to the Dark One for the Dark One's sake. She wants power, right? Yeah. She's selfish, right? And so she's very much of the whatever furthers my power, whatever fulfills my selfish, ambition is what I'm going for.
And I think those two teaming up, they would be a better ruler or more benevolent ruler than the Dark One. Benevolent in quotes, right?
Yeah.
They would be a better option, in my opinion.
Here's the weird thing about her. We talk about her being selfish. No doubt she is. We talk about her being super jealous. No doubt she is. It only goes to a point. Like, I really feel like when I put it all together that she really, like, even though, she wanted Luce Theron for his, what he could bring her, she really did love him. And this is why I get at that. If it was all about power, if it was all about what it could bring her, why didn't she try to go with Ishmael? Well, okay, Ishmael wouldn't be interested. We know that. But then why didn't she go for Demon Dread? Because as it says, even in this, and it talks about it in the book, without Luce Theron, he would have been the most, revered Aes Sedai. He would have been the number one guy, right? If Luce Theron was not alive. So why wouldn't she go to number two? Why wouldn't she try to go with Ishmael? Why wouldn't she do anything to replace that as opposed to keep just going after him? Was it like because she just wanted to conquer him? This is like my white stag that now I have to hunt down, like regardless of anything else? Because she doesn't seem that stupid, right? Like, they make her super complex, but then they make her downfall super narrow, which doesn't really align for me. So for me, I like to think of it, she really did love Luce Theron, but by the time she realized that, he was already gone, and then she spent the rest of the time trying to get him, because otherwise she would have just gone another way, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know, because like at the end, and I think that was more a desperation, she's like, well, I'll take Perrin. But I think that was like a last resort, because she had lost all her standing and everything else, So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Am I off?
No,
I think you're right. I think it was a little too little, a little too late kind of a thing, where I think it started off as a ploy for power. And then, to your point, after that was no longer an option, she realized she really did love him, right? And now she no longer has that avenue. And so, to your, I think she spends the bulk of the books trying to get back what was once hers.
So yeah, Lanfear has done great history established by Robert Jordan. She makes an appearance here in this book later on. Especially, we really get to know her in this book and then moving forward. So, like I said, she's one of my favorite Forsakens. So I'm glad that we're talking about her. So we aren't going to get to the Ajas that we had mentioned earlier. We'll just save that for the next podcast and some of the other things. So stay tuned for that episode coming up soon. Again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and it helps us out a lot. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode, and we will catch you guys later.
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.